New York moves to begin vaccinating children without parental consent. This makes absolutely no sense. Me as a mental health therapist, as a healthcare provider, can't understand how can you work with the child without their parents' consent. This goes against everything, all the rules, all the regulations. New York just throwing it out the window. I mean, kids can't consent to do anything, but now all of a sudden they can consent to do all these things without their parents now. I mean, this makes absolutely no sense. There is an attack. There is an attack on our children, um, particularly coming from the left. It's disgusting. If you live in places like New York or California and you have children, I would advise you to leave as soon as you can because you have absolutely no parental rights. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my merch store. Also, check out jdthepsychotherapist.com for news as well. All right, let's talk about this news. Now, this article comes from Slay News from Frank Bergman, and he reports that Democrat lawmakers in New York State are pushing new legislation that will allow for children to be vaccinated or put through surgical procedures without their parents' consent. The lawmakers behind deeply misleading legislation argue that minors should be able to make their own decisions about medical treatments, which makes absolutely no sense. Again, we know that our brain continues to grow. Our brain continues to grow until we're about 25 years old. So you're not really mature enough to make these decisions when you, especially when you're a child, these life-changing decisions. Again, it makes absolutely no sense. I've worked with kids before that are like 13, 14 years old. They have the mental capacities of an 8-year old and things like that. Do you expect them to be able to make these type of decisions? Like again, this goes against logic. But again, there is an attack on our children from these leftists, and it's disgusting. And we have to stand up and do something about this. The article goes on to say, however, it has long been established in law that children are not able to consent for themselves, and as such, their parents must make decisions on a number of issues for them. The legislation would allow any child or teen under 18 to seek out and consent to medical treatment, including vaccines, dental procedures, hospitalization, and even surgery. Surgery! They would be able to do so without parental consent as long as the minor appears to have the mental capacity to make that decision. Assembly Bill A6761, introduced by New York Assembly member Kareem Reyes, a Democrat, of course, also would allow Medicaid funds to pay for procedures and drugs administered to children. Proponents of the legislation, such as the leftist American Civil Liberties Union of New York, claim the measure is about ensuring all youth have, quote, access to quality care. That's not what it's about. This has absolutely nothing to do with access. This has to do with going to do procedures without parents. That's not access. Parents should be able to have consent to these things, not the child. But critics including John Gilmore, founder and executive director of nonprofit Autism Action Network, said the bill is dangerous, and I agree. Quote, the bill's biggest problem is that it allows any medical procedure to be done to children of any age without parental knowledge or consent. That's the kicker, Gilmore said in the statement. Gilmore said the bill has another problem too. The quote active summary statement on the official New York Assembly website says quote it quote allows homeless youth to give effective consent to certain medical, dental, health, and hospital services. But Gilmore said that statement is quote deliberately misleading. This is because the bill's text applies to more than just homeless youth seeking certain services. The bill states, quote, any person, including a minor, who comprehends the need for, the nature of, and the reasonably foreseeable risk and benefits involved in any contemplated medical, dental, health, and or hospital services, and any alternatives thereto may give effective consent to such services for themselves, and the consent of no other person shall be necessary. I mean, wow, 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 wow. It was something here that I wanted to point it out. I'll point out here. It says a minor who comprehends the need for. But again, how do we really know these kids really comprehend these things? I sit and I talk to kids all the time in my practice, and a lot of times you can say something and they say they understand it, but really they do not understand what you're talking about, and you have to break it down for them. They this bill is ridiculous. But quote, Albany is lying about the bill. Autism Action Network warns. Michael Kane, a New York resident and founder of Teachers for Choice, agreed. Quote, it's a complete lie to say the bill applies only to homeless children or runaways, and it's a dangerous one, Kane said. Quote, it's imperative that legislators understand what the bill really does. Gilmore warns that the vote could likely pass if lawmakers fail to go through the fine print in the legislation text. With New York lawmakers considering close to 10,000 bills, legislators may rely on a bill's one sentence summary rather than reading the full text for deciding how they vote, according to Gilmore. I agree. No politician really read all the bills. They just sign it. And Rand Paul used to talk about this all the time, talk about giving people time to read each bill before they sign it. But the bill has a companion in the Senate, S8352, introduced in January 19th by Democrat State Senator Rachel May from Syracuse. The bill shared identical text. According to the latest version of the bill, a minor could consent to, now check this out, y'all, general medical, dental, health, and hospital services, mental health outpatient services. I'm gonna be honest. Me personally, I would not work with a kid without parental consent. Substance abuse treatment, immunizations, family planning services. We all know what that is, and sexually transmitted diseases, diagnosis and treatment. The language in the bill is leading to concerns that it could be a stepping stone to lowering the age of sexual consent, and that's another point. That's what this whole thing is about. It's about it's these sick people, and I could say it's leftists, but it's some disgusting people on the right as well that's into children, and this is what this is about. It's about lowering consent so these disgusting people can do things to children. That's what this whole thing is really about. Meanwhile, the legislation also contains text that would allow for a medical practitioner to vaccinate a child, even if it goes against the will of their parents. The bill states that a practitioner may administer a vaccine even if they have reason to believe that a person in parental relation to the child objects to the immunization. It also states, quote, a child who may give effective consent to various medical interventions may give such consent to their own immunization, and the consent of no other person shall be necessary. A child, imagine a 10-year-old giving medical consent. What does a 10-year-old know anything about consequences and risks assessments and all these other things? But the bill allows minors under 16 in certain circumstances to assess psychotropic drugs and psychotherapy without parental consent. Again, me personally, even if that was the law of the many states that I practice in, I practice in a few states, I would never work with the child without the getting consent from their parents, because I wouldn't want anybody to do that to my kids. But psychotropic drugs, including a host of pharmaceutical products, including medication for depression, anxiety, sleep disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The current New York law allows minors 16 or older residing in a hospital to agree to psychotropic medications without parental consent if any of the following conditions are met. A parent or guardian is not reasonably available and the physician determines the minor has the capacity, or requiring parental consent would have a detrimental effect on the minor, or the parent has refused consent, providing that two physicians, including a psychiatric doctor who does not work for the facility, agree the medications are in the minor's best interest. Wow. Wow. So the parent can literally say, no, you know what? I see the side effects of these drugs, and looking at the risk benefit, I'm gonna decide that I don't want my child to take this medication. And someone in two doctors can say, well, we don't care about that. We don't care. We looked at the risk ourselves, and we're gonna administer your child this medication. That makes absolutely no sense. But A6761 S8352 would allow minors under 16 in these circumstances to do the same as long as the child comprehends the need for, the nature of, and the reasonable foreseeable risks and benefits involved. The bill does not include detailed information on how medical practitioners would assess a minor's capacity to comprehend the possible risk of potential treatment. It's very, very vague. Um, so basically, you can ask the child, hey, do you understand this procedure? Yes, I understand. Okay, good, let's go. That's it. That's it. It does, however, define capacity as follows: the minor ability to understand and appreciate the nature and consequence of the proposed treatment, including the benefit and risk of an alternative to such proposed treatment, and to reach an informed decision. Um, Lawyer Kim Mack Rosenberg notes that informed consent is a serious thing, and it is. However, this legislation devotes, quote, little attention to how to determine if a child can truly exercise informed consent, how to obtain that consent, and why true informed consent is critically important. Also, the bill attempts to blur the line between adult and child. I guess they meant blur, and does not provide a clear definition of minor that applies across all amended laws. However, some sections of the law define or describe the age threshold related to the minor consent. In the amendment to the mental hygiene law section, anyone under 16 still need parental guardian consent to be admitted as voluntary patient. In amendments to mental hygiene law, a minor is defined as a person under 18, excluding some special cases like emancipated minors or minors who are parents. And in amendments to section 2305 of public health law, treatment for STDs without parental consent is allowed for those under 21. Nevertheless, earlier sections of the bill does not specify any age range for minors, suggesting even young children could consent as long as they demonstrate appropriate, quote, capacity. Shockingly, it appears the Democrats behind the bill may believe that even an infant can give consent. That's because Section 18 of public health law omits previous language stating that children older than 12 can determine who gets access to their medical records. This deletion suggests that a child of any age no longer may but shall be notified of any request by a qualified person to review their patient information and deny access to, if any, they desire. This is just wild. So this is it for that. Really, it really doesn't make any sense. They're getting rid of parental consent. We all know why they're doing that. They're doing that because they want to get rid of parental consent altogether. They want to be able to do whatever they want to these children. So protect your kids. Get your kids out these states that's doing things like this. And let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time. Peace.